Welcome to the Vari Longmuir Podcast, episode number 13. Welcome to the Vari Longmuir Podcast, and as you may have guessed, I'm your host, Vari. Since stepping away from the 9-to-5 world back in 2009, I've been a creative director, illustrator, artist, business mentor, and coach to fellow creative types. The intention with this podcast is to offer a fresh perspective about what it really means to be a working creative. I'm offering simple strategies to add a little more joy to your days and sharing my own insights and lessons learned, often the hard way, from over a decade of being my own boss. Now let's get into today's episode. Hi guys, and welcome to this week's podcast. I am so excited to be recording this week's episode from my new house. Yay! It's been a big week of getting settled in here, but it already feels like home, which I love. What has been really amazing to watch is just how quickly my kids have made this their new home too. It completely blows my mind just how adaptable they are and how open and how willing they are to embrace change with such ease. It is such a lesson. We were chatting over dinner the other night, and I was telling the boys that I had actually never moved house until I was 17 when I moved to New York by myself. I grew up in the house that my dad had actually grown up into. He and my mum had moved back into the house when I was just a newborn baby to look after my granddad, who at that time was in the final stages of Parkinson's disease. And when he passed away, my parents stayed on in that house and they renovated it. And it became the home for me and my brother and my sister until we were all old enough to move out on our own. It's actually the house that my mum still lives in today, 30 something years later. When I told the boys this, it blew their little minds. To think that Gran's house, the house that they visit in Scotland, was where I grew up, but also where their granddad grew up, was just insane to them. Now, my boys have moved house a few times in their lives, and there was this part of me that believed that this was to their detriment. There was a sense of guilt. I definitely felt guilty that they didn't have the same consistency that I'd had as a kid. But I can see now just how much of a gift this really has been for them and how much this will serve them in their adult lives to be able to adapt to a change in external circumstances and not let that throw them off course. At dinner the other night, Noah, my youngest, said to me, "It feels like we've lived here forever, Mum." And I laughed and I had to agree with him. It is a total cliche, but the idea of home being where the heart is feels so true for me at this moment. Even though I never moved house with my family as a kid, I've moved a lot as an adult. I moved from Scotland to New York when I was 17. Then I moved back to Scotland. And then I moved from Scotland out to Australia at 23. And I've moved around a few different parts of Australia since I've been here. And every single place that I've lived, every apartment, every house has felt like a home and really quickly felt like a home. I was the one kid in my family to move away. My brother and sister stayed living in Scotland, and I was the one to leave as quickly as they could when they were able to. And I'd always identified with being someone who could make a home anywhere. Even as that 17-year-old boarding a plane in Glasgow, headed to New York by myself. And I love that I've been able to prove this thought, this belief that I can make a home anywhere to be 100% true for me. It really acts as this beautiful reminder to me that I get to choose what I think about any situation. And when I really live into this belief, I start to collect all kinds of evidence to prove it true to myself, which I just love. This leads us into what I want to talk to you about this week. I want to talk about the idea of unintentional goals. Now, the way I define an unintentional goal is something that you're working towards without any awareness or specific reasons why. And that word specific is really important in there. Let me give you a few examples of what an unintentional goal might be. Perhaps you're working in a job and you're really good at it, but you don't love it. You'd rather be free from the corporate world and doing your own thing. But your boss puts you forward for a promotion. You have to prepare a case study and a presentation for the partners, and you work day and night stressing out about getting it all done on time. You're working towards getting the promotion because someone else, your boss or your parents or your colleagues, all think it's an amazing opportunity. You're working towards this goal, but it's unintentionally. Another example might be, say you've been saving for years, you've been working overtime, you're taking zero time off, you're holding off on taking those trips that you've been dreaming of because you are saving to buy a house. Because that's what responsible adults do, right? Perhaps that's what will make you look accomplished and successful to your parents. Now, don't get me wrong, having a goal of owning a house is an amazing goal to have. But you have to be sure that you're doing it because it's your goal. Perhaps having a small, little, cozy rental in your favorite neighborhood that's super low maintenance and close to the airport is actually perfect for you. So you can have a home base to come back to, but allows you to travel and to work on the road for 6 months of the year. So, why do we have unintentional goals? We have unintentional goals for a whole heap of reasons. These could be other people's expectations of us. It could be conditioning from our parents. It could be old habitual ways of thinking from your past. And it could also be the social and cultural conditioning that we are constantly exposed to these days. It sounds really obvious, but one of the most essential ways to create a life of your dreams and to achieve wild success in your work and in your life is to have intentional goals. These are goals that are aligned with how you want to live your life. They're aligned with how you want to feel when you wake up in the morning. They're aligned with how you want to show up for yourself and to the world. Now, to support this episode, I have an exercise that I would love for you to do. I want you to grab a piece of paper and a pen, and I want you to write down 25 things that you want. Now, these can be big physical things like that dream home or a car, or they can be more subtle things like perhaps you want to get 8 hours sleep each night. Once you've got 25 things written down on that piece of paper, I want you to go back over them and ask yourself this question. Do I want this for me, or does someone else want this for me? Let me repeat that. You want to ask yourself, do I want this for me, or does someone else want this for me? Let me share an example of an unintentional goal that I had for myself in my own life. I used to think that I wanted to cook amazing meals for me and my boys every single night. I'd buy a ton of beautiful cookbooks and pick out what gourmet meal we'd have each night of the week. Then I'd find myself getting massively stressed out about finding the time to go and shop to buy all the ingredients, let alone actually cooking the meal itself. And let me say, not everything in these cookbooks was available in my local supermarket. Some things were a little bit obscure and hard to come by. Then I would spend hours making the meal before we'd sit down, and my boys would either devour it in 10 minutes or, worse than that, they'd say they didn't really like it. I realised that being the gourmet chef mum was an unintentional goal that I had been working towards unconsciously myself. But this unintentional goal I'd been trying to achieve, I was failing miserably at. So now dinner times are so much more simple. We've got a rotation of a few different meals that we all love. And now I can spend so much more time and energy doing things that I actually and consciously want to do and want to get better at. It was such a liberating feeling to release this unintentional goal and to be okay with being a bad gourmet chef mum. So take 10 minutes today and write out those 25 things that you want and ask yourself that question. Do I want this for me, or does someone else want this for me? Then give yourself permission to just release these unintentional goals. Our time on this planet is so limited, and we do not have to spend it trying to be the gourmet chef mum if we don't want to. So that's what I've got for you on unintentional goals. Now that we've cleared out some of that clutter that's been taking up your time and your energy, next week I want to jump into talking about intentional goals. I am super excited to share with you my process for goal setting that actually works. It's going to be a goodie. That's all for this week, guys. For updates, be sure and subscribe to my newsletter over at varilongmuir.com and come follow me on Instagram. I'm at Vari Longmuir. Thank you so much, as always, for listening, and I'll talk to you next week. If you enjoyed this podcast and you're ready to dive in deeper to create a business and life with intention, I would love to chat with you. Each month, I offer a limited number of discovery calls. I like to think of these as a casual first date. It's an opportunity for us to connect, for me to find out what's going on in your business and your life at the moment, and see if we're a good fit to coach together. These calls are completely free and with zero obligation. And I know from every single person I talk to, they leave with more clarity and more focus, whether they go on to work with me or not. So it's a win-win. There is literally nothing to lose. For more information and to book our virtual coffee date, head on over to varilongmuir.com/coaching.